Stop taking financial advice from people who think playing it safe is the smartest move. Stop following those who tell you to stash your money away in low-interest accounts while inflation quietly erodes its value. Most people believe wealth is built by collecting and holding on to money. They treat it like something to hide and protect at all costs. But that idea is deeply flawed. If you go back to one of the oldest frameworks of financial wisdom ever recorded, the Torah, you'll see a very different perspective. In that system, what most people call saving isn't praised. In fact, the way the system works makes hoarding ineffective by design. I'm not speaking as a motivational speaker trying to inspire you with empty words. I'm speaking from the mindset of both a business leader and a student of ancient financial principles that have been practiced and refined for thousands of years. These principles have allowed a small population to remain economically strong across centuries, through empires rising and falling, through crises and recoveries. Here's the truth: most modern business advice won't tell you. Money behaves like blood. When blood flows, the body thrives. When it stops, the body fails. The same applies to money. When it circulates, it grows. When it's locked away, it loses purpose and power. This isn't theory, it's a pattern repeated across history. There's a story from ancient times about people receiving daily provision. They were instructed to take only what they needed for that day and not store extra out of fear. Those who ignored this and tried to hoard more found that what they saved spoiled and became useless. The lesson is simple but powerful. Resources that are held out of fear tend to decay. When you pull money out of circulation and hide it purely for security, you're operating from fear, not strategy. And fear-based decisions tend to limit growth. In business, a scarcity mindset often creates the very outcomes it tries to avoid. The wealthy don't simply save. They position and allocate. There's a major difference. Saving is about protection. Allocation is about intention and movement. One of the most enduring strategies passed down through generations is surprisingly simple. Divide your resources into 3 parts. One portion goes into long-term, stable assets, things like land or real estate. These form your foundation and protect against inflation over time. Another portion goes into active ventures, business, trade, or investments that generate income. These carry more risk, but they also offer growth and opportunity. The final portion remains liquid, not idle but ready. This is not money sitting aimlessly in an account. It's capital prepared to act the moment an opportunity appears. It's your ability to move quickly when others hesitate. Most people misunderstand liquidity. They think it's about safety. In reality, it's about readiness. Those who build lasting wealth aren't sitting back hoping their savings will protect them. They are constantly watching, waiting, and preparing to deploy resources where they can multiply. Think about how many people experience a good financial year. Instead of building on that momentum, they become cautious. They stop taking calculated risks. They slow down. They hold back. And over time, their growth fades. Money at its core is tied to purpose and movement. When it stops moving, the drive behind it weakens. And when that happens, businesses and opportunities begin to shrink. Many leaders fail not because they lack resources, but because they become too focused on protecting what they have instead of expanding it. They shift from being proactive to reactive, from building to preserving. But in a competitive world, standing still isn't neutral, it's falling behind. So the real question is this: are you managing your resources just to survive, or are you using them to create something bigger? Because you can't lead if your strategy is built on fear. You can't grow if your capital is frozen. Look at industries where wealth consistently circulates: high-level real estate, trade networks, investment circles. In those environments, money is rarely viewed as something to hold on to. It's seen as leverage. If someone has $1 million, they don't ask how long it will last. They ask how many larger opportunities it can unlock. They think in terms of expansion, not preservation. This mindset changes everything. Instead of asking, how do I keep this safe? The question becomes, where can this create more value? That shift, from holding to moving, from fear to strategy, is what separates stagnation from growth. And the principle is timeless. Resources that flow create life. Resources that are trapped lose it. What Joseph built in Egypt wasn't just storage, it was a complete system. He didn't simply collect grain and wait for hard times. He organized supply chains, controlled distribution, and positioned himself at the center of an entire economy. That's a completely different level of thinking. Before you move on, Understand this clearly. Everything you've heard so far reflects just one principle. There are many more like it. Strategies that have been quietly passed down for generations and rarely shared openly. I've gathered them into one place under the name Rabbi David, Torah Wisdom Path. If this way of thinking has already shifted how you see money, then going deeper will reshape how you approach business, risk, and opportunity altogether. When the famine finally came, Joseph wasn't just prepared, he was in control. While others were desperate, he had leverage. He used that moment to acquire land, consolidate power, and turn a crisis into one of the greatest economic transformations in history. That's the difference between someone who merely saves and someone who knows how to manage and direct resources. So ask yourself honestly, are you thinking like Joseph? Or are you among those who enjoy abundance when times are good, only to struggle when conditions change because nothing was structured properly? Most people make the same mistake. In times of plenty, they spend freely and assume it will last forever. Then when things slow down, they're left scrambling. The wiser approach is different. You use your strong seasons to build systems that keep things moving. So when the market shifts, and it always does, you're in a position of strength, not survival. But there's another layer to this that many modern business minds tend to ignore. It's the idea of giving, a fixed portion of your earnings. Traditionally, this means setting aside 10%, sometimes even 20%, not for yourself, but to contribute outward. At first glance, it looks like you're reducing your resources. From a purely mathematical view, it seems like a loss. But that's only if you see money as something to hold. When you understand it as something that flows, the perspective changes completely. Giving forces a shift in mindset. It moves you from being someone who clings to money into someone who directs it. Think of it this way. If you act like a container, you have limits. Once you're full, that's it. But if you become a channel, something that allows money to move through, it keeps flowing, and there's no fixed ceiling. That's why many highly successful families consistently invest in charities, institutions, and public works. It's not just generosity, it's alignment with a system where movement sustains growth. I once worked with a founder who had built a solid company and accumulated a few million in reserves. But instead of using that capital to expand, he froze. He became overly cautious, afraid of losing what he had. He stopped investing in innovation, stopped hiring, and started playing defense. I told him something he didn't expect. You're already acting like you're in a downturn. The problem isn't the market, it's your mindset. I pushed him to do two things. First, to give away a meaningful portion of his cash to something he genuinely cared about. Second, to reinvest aggressively into new ideas within his business. He resisted at first. It felt risky, even reckless to him. But what happened next changed everything. That act of giving broke his fear. It shifted how he made decisions. He stopped operating from anxiety and started thinking strategically again. Within a year and a half, his company multiplied in value many times over. Not because he got lucky, but because he reactivated movement. This connects to another important point: debt and leverage. Many people either fear debt completely or misuse it for consumption. But there's a difference between destructive debt and strategic leverage. Using resources to create more value, build businesses, and support livelihoods isn't just acceptable, it's necessary if you want to grow. You're not meant to sit on resources and guard them endlessly. You're meant to build, expand, and create impact. That requires movement. Think about it. Are you working for your money, or is your money working for you? If your resources are sitting idle and causing you stress, then you're not really in control. You're just protecting something that's slowly losing its strength. There's also the idea of cycles. Growth isn't constant. There are phases of expansion and phases of rest. Understanding this rhythm is critical. You can't expect things to rise forever without adjustment. Smart operators know when to push forward and when to consolidate. Real stability doesn't come from hoarding cash. It comes from building strength in multiple areas: skills, relationships, assets, and reputation. If everything you have is tied to one form, you're exposed. But if you've built networks, invested wisely, and established trust, you're far more secure than someone sitting on a pile of money. And that brings us to one of the most valuable assets you can ever develop: your name. Reputation carries more weight than anything you can store. It opens doors, creates opportunities, and builds trust faster than any amount of capital. You can't lock it away or save it for later. It has to be earned continuously through how you operate, how you treat people, and how consistently you deliver. I remember being involved in a major property deal where millions were at stake. In the end, the deciding factor wasn't just numbers, it was trust. The person with the strongest reputation had the advantage, not because of what they had saved, but because of how they had conducted themselves over time. That's the real game. It's not about how much you hold, it's about how effectively you move, build, and position everything you have. I was part of a major property deal where two buyers were competing. One of them had plenty of cash sitting ready in a bank account. He felt confident, even a bit arrogant, and tried to push the price down because he believed having liquid cash gave him total control. The second bidder was a Jewish investment group. Their money wasn't sitting idle in one place. It was already working across multiple projects. But what they had was something far more powerful than idle cash, a strong reputation with lenders and a proven ability to act quickly and decisively. Even though their offer was more structured and less straightforward, they won the deal. Why? Because the seller trusted them to execute. The first buyer had money, but he behaved like someone who hoards. And people who hoard tend to be rigid, hesitant, and difficult to deal with. Those who understand how to manage capital are flexible, strategic, and dependable. So here's a simple question you need to answer for yourself. Do you want to be a warehouse or a river? A warehouse holds things still. Over time, what sits too long loses value. A river, on the other hand, keeps moving. It brings energy, growth, and life wherever it flows. There's a powerful image that illustrates this. In Israel, there are two bodies of water connected by the same river. One is full of life, fish, vegetation, movement. The other is lifeless. The difference is simple. One receives and gives, the other only receives and keeps everything. That's exactly how money works. If all you do is collect and hold, eventually things stagnate. Your thinking, your opportunities, your momentum. But when you allow resources to move through investment, growth, and contribution, everything around you expands. Now let's make this practical without turning it into reckless behavior. This isn't about wasting money on status symbols. That's what people do when they have money but no strategy. Real wealth is built by acquiring assets, things that generate more value over time. Here's a simple plan you can act on immediately. Start by identifying money that isn't doing anything for you. Any cash beyond what you need for short-term operations or quick opportunities is essentially sitting idle. That kind of money slowly loses power. Your job is to put it to work, whether that's through investments, business expansion, or improving your systems. Next, apply what I call the conduit principle. If you're not already setting aside a portion of your earnings to give, begin now. Don't wait until you feel ready. This step isn't just about generosity, it changes how you relate to money. It keeps you from becoming attached in a way that limits growth. It reminds you that money is something you direct, not something you cling to. In traditional thinking, giving is also seen as a form of protection, a way to maintain balance and perspective. In business terms, it keeps your ego in check and helps you stay grounded while you grow. Then take a hard look at your reputation. Who knows you as someone reliable? Who trusts your word? In business, speed matters, and deals move faster when trust is already established. If you cut corners for quick gains, you might win once, but you damage your long-term position. Every interaction, every agreement should strengthen your credibility for future opportunities. The most successful families didn't build wealth through shortcuts. They built it by consistently delivering value and maintaining trust across generations. There's an old story about a wealthy man in Jerusalem who once needed water during a drought. He made a bold agreement to secure it, promising to return what he borrowed under strict terms. When the deadline came and conditions hadn't improved, he didn't panic. Instead of focusing on money, he focused on fulfilling his commitment. The story teaches something important. The goal isn't just profit, it's honoring your word and maintaining integrity. That level of confidence comes from understanding that you're part of a larger system. It's not about what's sitting in your account, it's about how well you operate within that system. If you look at major figures in business, past and present, they didn't spend their time worrying about how much they had saved. They focused on where their resources could create the most impact. They treated the world like a chessboard, constantly repositioning to stay ahead. And underlying all of this is a framework that goes beyond numbers. It guides how you treat people, how you price your products, how you manage success, and how you view the source of your ability to create wealth. When you operate within that framework, you're not just earning money. You're building something that moves, grows, and lasts. These principles have outlived empires, markets, and entire economic systems. Yet most people have been trained from a young age in a system designed to produce workers, not builders. Workers are taught to save. They save because they fear losing their job, fear instability, and often doubt their ability to create again. Builders think differently. They don't just store money, they direct it, move it, and expand it. They understand that a savings account is not real security. True security comes from your ability to create value and from aligning yourself with the deeper rules that govern growth. Think about how certain industries operate at the highest level. In places like New York's Diamond District, deals worth millions happen with a handshake and a simple word of trust. No endless contracts, no delays. That level of speed only exists because there is a shared understanding. Movement matters more than hoarding. If everyone focused on protecting themselves instead of transacting, the entire system would collapse. Instead, they trust, they act, and they grow together. You need to start seeing your business differently. It shouldn't just be a vehicle to make money, it should be something more meaningful, a place where value is created and shared. In the Torah, the Mishkan wasn't built as a vault to store wealth. It was built as a place of purpose, crafted with the finest materials, but meant for service. When your business serves your customers, your team, and your community, wealth becomes a natural outcome. But if your only goal is to pile up money and lock it away, don't be surprised when things start to break down. Your energy fades, your team loses interest, and your customers move on to something more alive. Now let's address the obvious objection. You might say, what about economic crashes? What about times when people lost everything because they didn't have savings? That's a fair concern, but it misses the point. This isn't about having nothing set aside. It's about not making saving your ultimate goal. There's a difference between having liquidity with purpose and hoarding out of fear. When markets crash, those who are prepared with available capital don't just survive, they capitalize. They step in when others are forced to sell. They acquire assets at a discount. The difference isn't luck. It's preparation combined with the right mindset. Savers panic. Allocators act. This isn't guesswork. These are principles that have been around for thousands of years. The problem is that most people look for shortcuts. They want quick wins without understanding the foundation. But real power comes from the root, from understanding how the system actually works. At a deeper level, this way of thinking is about partnership with the process of creation itself. And a true partner doesn't hide resources. A partner puts them to work. Look at Abraham. He became wealthy, but his wealth wasn't a burden. It was a source of influence and purpose. He used it to build, to host, to establish something lasting. He took risks, moved into new territory, and created a legacy that still exists today. When he made major purchases, he didn't hesitate to pay a premium for something strategically important. He understood that holding on to money at the expense of opportunity was a losing game. So ask yourself, are you cutting corners on the things that matter most? Are you hiring cheap instead of investing in top talent? Are you avoiding tools and technology that could multiply your efficiency? That's what the saving mindset does. It shrinks your thinking. It makes you cautious in the wrong places. The mindset you need is one of expansion, growth in every direction. Not reckless spending, but intentional allocation. Take a close look at your finances this week. Where is your money stuck? Where is it sitting without purpose? Where have your decisions been driven by fear instead of strategy? If you find resources that are just sitting there for safety, give them a role. Assign them to something productive. Put them into long-term assets, active investments, or keep them ready for real opportunities, but always with intention. And don't ignore the principle of giving. If there's no outlet, eventually the flow slows down. That's not philosophy, it's how systems work. Movement sustains momentum. Understand this clearly. The Torah is not just a spiritual text. It's also a deeply tested framework for how value, trade, and growth function over time. It has survived every economic cycle because it is built on principles, not trends. You've been told that wealth is complicated or based on luck or hustle. It's not. It's a system. A set of rules. And once you start applying even a small part of it, things begin to shift. So stop asking how you can save more. Start asking how effectively you can use what you already have. That one shift in thinking can change everything. If you want to go further, stay connected to Rabbi David, Torah Wisdom Path. There's a depth here that most people never explore, and that's exactly why it gives you an advantage. But don't just listen, act. Move something today. Invest in something meaningful. Give something. Strengthen your reputation. Even one step is enough to start changing your direction. In this tradition, we don't sit back and wait for luck. We prepare ourselves so that when opportunity comes, we're ready to receive it. Opportunities are always there. The question is whether you've built the capacity to handle them. You already have what you need to begin. Now it's time to use it. Stop thinking like someone who only protects. Start thinking like someone who builds. Be someone who directs, not someone who hoards. The world doesn't need more people holding things back. It needs people who move, create, and expand. Because in the end, it's not the ones who store everything who win. It's the ones who keep things flowing.